Hey people, this is a story of how I learned to cure my coon dog from COVID. And so, a coon dog is a dog he'll run up a coon up the wrong tree. And the wrong tree is a tree that coon doesn't have a hole in, so he can't hide. And so these dogs is trained to run out in the woods and tree a coon and sound off, and then the hunter will come and shoot that coon down, and they make coon skin hats, and if you ever eat a coon, you'll know the real reason why they like the coon. It's like the best roast beef you ever had. And so it's been going on for a long time, and most old coon hunters, they weren't real highly educated. So 30 years ago, I was living in old river shanty, and a girl across the river brought me this big, beautiful black puppy. He looked to be like a black lab, but we knew the parents, and it was actually a Rhodesian Ridgeback and coyote mix. And I had spent a lot of time with that dog training it. I wasn't a coon hunter, but I was teaching him party tricks, and it was the most obedient dog. Everybody in town knew that dog. Anywhere I went, the kids would run up, and they all knew his name. I didn't know how, but everybody knew my dog. And so he was about 9 months to a year, and he had hacked and coughed a couple times during training, so I brought it to the vet. He was a really good dog, and he went through all his checkup, and she was just loving him, and took some blood, and she came back in later, and she held my hand and told me that my dog had heartworms. And I said, "How much is this gonna cost?" So she went to explaining the life cycle of heartworms to me. And she explained how the heartworms live in deer out in the field, and they draw blood out of that deer. And it'll have these microphylla heartworms, little tiny ones that'll fit up in that syringe, and it'll bring them. And when it went and stuck it in your dog, sometimes it lets some of that blood back out, and those little microphylla come out, and then they go through a life cycle of growing inside your dog. And so they breed, and so you have many different sizes. You have the tiny babies, and you have them growing. You have them growing until they're 4 or 5 foot long. They'll attach there in the heart like a hookworm, and the heart will pump that blood, and they'll hang back. The heart pumps that blood to the lungs first, so that's why they start hacking. They get a little cough. And then, the worm gets so long, he's old, and it starts to break off, and after that blood goes to the lungs, and it pumps through the brain, and it goes back through the cycle, and they dissolve and come out into feces. And it's a really ugly sight the way she explains it to you. And I says, "Yeah, but, what's it going to cost me to cure this?" And she squeezed my hand, and she said $2,000. And I was living here on the river shanty, so I kind of shook her hand loose, and I told her that me and my dog just aren't that attached. She had let me know that they were only in that second stage. They were small still, and the price even goes up the bigger they get. So I had went back home and went next door to the bait shop. If you don't know what a bait shop is, it's like a bar room on a river, except sometimes they can sell you some worms. Might even have some hooks or sinkers there. And I was telling the old girl that operates the bait shop about it, and she says, my boyfriend, he takes care of his coon dogs. He knows something about that. So I was back at my place later on that day, and this guy come by. He looked about like this, except a little meaner and uglier. Looked real country. And she apparently had told him, and he come to talk to me about it. And so he told me, he says, we ain't got a whole lot of money, country boys and that coon, we don't have a whole lot of cash. We take care of our own dogs. He says, I'm going to tell you how we do it. It's the same way that the veterinarians do it. He says, go to the co-op and ask them for some cattle worm, or this Ivermectin injection. I don't think they had all the others back then anyway. So get you a bottle of Ivermectin, and they'll get you some syringes that go with it. And he says get you some 7-in-1 shot while you're there for parvo, and get him a couple 100-pound wormer pills, and go through the regular routine. You give them the 7-1 and give them a week, and give them a 100-pound worth of wormer pills, however much your dog weighs. They might, if your dog weighs 70, they might give you a 50 and a 20. And you just go through, give it to them, and then give them a couple weeks, and then do it again. And what you're doing is you're killing the big ones and the small ones. They breed in that time. You miss some during the breeding while they're in an egg cycle. You miss them, so you let them grow up big enough before that they have time to breed again and kill them again. And that's why you wait that certain amount of time between them. And he says the trick is you don't want to kill all these worms, because that heart, when they die, that heart's going to pump them to the lungs, and then they're going to go straight to the brain, and they're going to give that dog a stroke and kill it. He says the trick is to just kill the smallest ones first. He said give them a little bitty dose, and you're killing the small ones first, and go through time. Take your time, so just a few, just some of them die off slowly, and they don't all go into the brain all at one time. He says weigh up your dog, and however much your dog weighs, the injection is going to be that many milliliters. And so luckily my dog weighed 100 pounds, and it made this really easy. But you'll have to do a little more math if your dog's different, if your dog's bigger or smaller. He says start with a dime, just 10%. He said for a couple days, don't feed your dog any fatty foods. And, if it's hot out, bring them inside where it's cool. Don't stress your dog. And give them a dime. So my dog's first dose was just at this 10 here. And so this old syringe got a needle on it, because you're going to have to draw it out of a little rubber top on the bottle. But you don't inject it into the dog. You just unscrew the end and just feed it to him in the mouth. And it must taste good, because, the dogs hate to take medicine. They know what's up. But after I would give it to him, he would come back and try to lick the syringe and get it all out. So it must taste good. And just keep your eye on your dog and make sure he's doing all right. If something should happen, then you have to rush to the vet and tell him what you did. And then, just give him 10 days, 14 days, and you just, you killed the smallest ones. The big ones, that little dose didn't affect them. And so 14 days later, 10, 14 days later, you double that dose up, So then I brought it to 20. And do the same thing, for couple days before that, don't feed them a lot of real fatty foods. Make sure they're cool, not out in the heat stressing. And if your dog didn't lay down and get real sick the first time, a lot of times if they got bad heartworms, they'll get sick the first time. If you didn't lay down and get real sick the first time, you're probably going to be all right. Just go on out throughout the process, and raise it up to a 20 then in the second week. So it was the first week I give them a warmer pill. I give them 10 days, and then I give them a warmer pill. And you're trying to kill all the little smaller parasites before you go attack this big problem. And give it a week and give them a 7-in-1 injection. And that 7-in-1 injection, it's going to inject in under the skin. And then give them 10 days, weeks, and give them a booster. If you haven't never given them a 7-in-1 before, you'll have to do a booster on it. But I've always given my dogs their 7-in-1 and their warmer pills. I always did that myself. And so there's no need for the booster. So I give it 10 days and I give him the 10%. And it barely hit him, He didn't really lay down a lot. He didn't make him real sick, so I knew it was okay. Like I said, she told me it was it was at the lowest degree. They weren't real big. And so 14 days later, I raised it up to a 20. And same process. 14 days later, I raised it up to a 40. Same process. 14 days later, I raised it up to an 80. Same process. And then 10 days later, I give them the full dose at the 100. And then, after that, if you have bad mosquito problem, you could just give them this full dose, their full dose. My 100-pound dog took the 100 milliunits. And you could just do that every month. And if you don't have the mosquitoes, year round, you can just wait till the mosquitoes is there. Or you can wait 2 months, and give them a half dose 1 month, and then a full dose 2 weeks later. You can skip a couple months and give them a half dose, or you can wait a year when the mosquitoes come back around and start at the dime, the 20, and go through the routine. But this is your heart warmer. You don't have to give them a heart warmer. You really don't. This kills everything. You don't have to give them any of the other shots. This kills every worm, every parasite in them. The reason you're wanting to kill all these worms in your cattle is so they eat and get fat. You don't want them wasting the food. You don't want hookworms in your puppy. You feed your puppies forever and they never get any weight. It's because the hookworms is eating all the nutrition. They ain't getting no nutrition out of their food. So coon hunting ain't the same as it used to be. Now they have shows where they don't shoot the coon, and they just rate the dogs, and the winner gets all kind of cash and prizes. And I've heard 25,000 and up sometimes. So about 15 years ago, I was building a barn for a local veterinarian, and I went by his office, and a gallon jar up on the counter with a dog's heart in it, and it was just full of 4 or 5 foot long heartworms. And I knew that was my chance to get the girl to talk, because in their Hippocratic oath, they can't say anything about it. And so I told her the story of how I had treated my dog when he had heartworms, and I told her the whole story, exactly how I did it. And all she could say was, that should have worked. It's the same when you go down to buy Ivermectin. They're not going to tell you that that's what it's for. They can't tell you that. It's illegal for them. It's the same reason that they take movies down. And so I had posted the movie the other day about this Dr. Corey. He was 2 days ago. He was in a Senate hearing, and he told all about all the studies and how this Ivomec is the miracle treatment for COVID. And that movie lasted less than 20 minutes. They pulled it down. But I had put it up here on my hidden history on BitChute. You can see the movie here. And I'll leave the link underneath here. So my dog had lived another 13 years after that. He was loved by all. I treated many other people's dogs that I knew was too poor to treat their dogs for heartworms. And I never had a problem. Haven't lost a dog yet. I still do it today. And coon hunting has changed since. Like I said, they don't even shoot the coon much anymore. Now you got a lot of doctors and lawyers running coon dogs for prestige, just to say they won. So I'm going to investigate further into this and see if I can find a human dosage. But I would bet it's the same as the dog. A milliunit for a pound. Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. A good day.